Okay, welcome everyone to the Analytic Mind podcast. It's been a while since I did my last podcast, so I'm really excited to get back into it. We've got an awesome guest. Welcome, Shashank Kalanithi. Hopefully, I've got that right. I know I probably butchered it a little bit. Maybe you can refine it for me. But hey, let's just get started. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what you do, and then we can just jump into it. How about that?
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me on, Sam. So my name is Shashank Kalanithi, so you're pretty close. And I am a senior data analyst working out of Seattle, Washington in the United States. I work for Nordstrom, which is a North American fashion retailer. So we operate mostly in Canada and the United States, heavily biased towards the United States, of course. I have a degree in chemistry, and then after that, got into the analytics space just kind of randomly. So the original plan was to go become a doctor. Didn't really have much of an interest in that, honestly, but I ended up getting the chemistry degree anyways. And then after that, I happened to randomly get a job in analytics, and then just found that it was a great field that hit a large number of the things I was looking for in a career. It was mentally challenging. There was a great opportunity to build out technical skills, such as coding and stuff like that, which I found very interesting. And it tapped into my natural desire to analyze and find explanations for different phenomena in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so, how did you end up at Nordstrom? Nordstrom's obviously huge in North America. And so how did you end up there? And maybe give us an outline of what are the interesting things that are going on there in terms of data science and in the analytics space.
Yeah, so like I said, I graduated with a degree in chemistry, and then I got a internship at a company called Interstate Batteries, a great company, privately held company, and it's the largest lead acid battery distributor in North America. So basically, car batteries. And after that, I picked up a lot of skills over there. Moved to a different company, CSC Service Works. They do they manage laundry machines. So if you live in an apartment in the United States and you have a laundry room, chances are you're using a CSC laundry machine, because they're by far the biggest player in that space. And then I was looking to try and go to a bigger enterprise. So both those companies were great. But they were what you call like mid-sized enterprises. I think revenue was sub 3 billion for each of those. So like 2 billion for Interstate, some like 1 point something for CSC, if I'm not mistaken. And, I wanted to go to the West Coast. The idea was there's this professor I listened to, Scott Galloway. He's a professor of marketing at the NYU Stern School.
I know him well, yeah. I listened to his podcast, The Pivot.
Yeah. Well, really funny guy, right? And he had this thing where he like kind of gave advice where he says like, if you want to be successful, right, here's my advice to you. And what he said was, there are a couple of things you need to do. Like he says, take two things that don't normally go together, become good at those things and combine them together. So some like fashion analytics or something like that, right? And the second thing he said was, if you want to be the best at something, you have to go where the best people are practicing. In the tech space, there are probably three places in America where you'll see the best people, like the best employees, basically. San Francisco, obviously number one, like the Bay Area in general, obviously number one. Seattle is probably number two. And the third one, a lot of people would say Austin. I would actually argue that is probably New York City. New York doesn't get talked about that much in relation to being a major tech hub, but that's because they have so many other things going on as well that, the tech is one of the many world leading industries they have. So of those three cities, I got a job in Seattle first with Nordstrom. And I started as a senior data analyst. My skill set includes, SQL, Tableau, Python, stuff like that. I love coding. It's a lot of fun for me. I'm actually, you can't really see it on the camera, but I'm running a web scraper on the side for a project I'm working on currently, like a personal one. And at Nordstrom, we do a lot of stuff. I work in a team called Strategic Analytics, which is there for the purposes of answering questions that executives might have. And people like the director level up usually ask us questions and ask us, okay, like how does this stuff work? How does that stuff work? Whenever earnings calls come in, they may have some other questions about how certain phenomena tracked after the earnings call. So working for a public company obviously has a lot of like just interesting stuff going on with it. And currently we're doing a couple of projects, one of which is building out this automated machine learning platform that's supposed to augment the capacity or the capability of the individual data analyst. That way you can throw a lot of the stuff you'd ask a data analyst at the platform, and it should be able to answer 60% of that question by itself, leaving the other 40% for a data analyst to check and verify, which would greatly augment the capacities of our team. So answering questions, your regular, data analyst stuff, and building out machine learning platforms. That's what I do at Nordstrom.
Awesome. Oh, that's really, really fascinating. One thing I was thinking about when you were talking about all of those different cities within the States, I mean, we're really, getting down to the nitty gritty. I mean, they're all fantastic places, I'm sure, and a lot of talented people, and there's many more talented people everywhere in the States. So I think, even though there's definitely what you would consider a top tier, I think there's still some fantastic organizations and places everywhere. I mean, I myself used to work in Southern California, and I worked at a large financial firm called PIMCO, one of the biggest bond funds in the world, and that's in Southern California in Orange County, and so there's just talent everywhere, right? Fantastic people everywhere. But yeah, look, Seattle's obviously where a lot of where Amazon and Microsoft are based, aren't they? So there's just tremendous talent just everywhere you look around you. Would that be right?
Yeah, I would argue you can be talented anywhere in the world, especially in a field like this. The great thing about it is it's so remote friendly that you can go anywhere in the world. You'll find incredibly, incredibly talented people. I'm from Dallas, Texas. Not what you would think of as a tech city, but there are some incredibly talented analysts from Dallas, Texas. I think the advantages you have to these other cities is the number of people there, because the Amazon headquarters is right next to me, and there's probably like 10,000 people in that building right there. And then, my the building I live in is basically only Microsoft and Amazon people. So I think that if you are looking for extremely large numbers of those people, then, there are a couple of cities in America that specialize in that. But I would also say, one disadvantage to that, right? And I started to notice it living over here, is that you can get really sucked into this bubble. Where it's what you call the tech bubble, right? And it's basically only tech people that only know software engineering, product development, project management, data analysis, data science, the really tech focused fields or tech focused jobs. And I think that it can create a really big blind spot with someone if you don't make it an effort to diversify and find people that do other stuff. And that's where I think cities Southern California, Southern California is a very interesting place, right? Because more so than probably any region in America, it's basically it's almost like a country within a country, right? Southern California is not just LA. It's all the surrounding areas, which are very intimately connected with one another. And you have some a couple 10 million in that area. It's crazy how big it is.
I think, California is the 11th largest economy in the world, I think.
Yeah. And just the Los Angeles metropolitan area's economy is bigger than South Korea's, I believe, and by extension, Russia as well. So that gives you a idea of just how heavy hitting it is. And I think another way, that's the advice I gave earlier is this, Scott Galloway's opinion, and that's one way to go about it. But I think if you go to a city, or if you go to Southern California, you'll meet so many different people, along with many talented tech people, that you will probably run into some really interesting ideas as to, say you want to start a business with analytics or something, or find ways to apply analytics to spaces that it's not normally applied to. So I think there's an advantage to that as well.
It's just more dispersed, isn't it, as well? When you've got city centers, because California is just so spread out. And when you've got city centers where everyone in the same building is working at the top end of tech, you're going to get this serendipity, effect where everyone's sort of knocking into each other and discussing all the latest and greatest things. So there's sort of network effect benefits there. I'll tell you an interesting stat. Orange County, where I worked a few years back, its economy is larger than the whole of New Zealand. So
wow.
I always found that quite fascinating, and I think there's probably if Orange County is actually quite a big area as well. It's well over 1 million, maybe 2 million people just in that sort of that area. And there's just some huge companies that obviously make a huge impact on the economy there, and then that equates to far more than the whole of New Zealand, which is pretty amazing. Anyway, so look, I'm fascinated to jump into a little bit more about some sort of like projects that, and one of the ones you've already mentioned, like this augmentation of your analytics. I'm fascinated to learn about how you're actually doing that. Like, what is like what is the concept of like how did you come up with that idea? How is that being implemented? This is something that I, to be honest, have not really heard of, this augmentation concept around data analysts. So yeah, really keen to learn a little bit more about that project.
Yeah. So as much as I can go into it detail wise, it kind of goes into, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 basic concepts, right? So there is, like, what does a data analyst do? Let's first break down the role of a data analyst, right? There are many different data analysts out there, but I'm going to pick on specifically like what, I've done in my career and what like, data analysts kind of in my space, in my world do, right? Usually a stakeholder just being a keyword for a business person who doesn't pull their own data for the most part, they will either want to start a new initiative or track the performance of something that's already been going on. So at Nordstrom, there's a couple of things, right? We are a company that differentiates ourselves based on our customer service. We operate at the upper end of department store retail in America, not the highest end, but I'd say like right below that usually. And in that end, we have customers who, ask for a great service. So they'll come in, there's a couple of services we have in store. And one thing that, for example, our stakeholders want to know is how much can we attribute these services to, like customer loyalty or something like that, for example, right? Another one might be someone launches a new program to, better connect with customers. And then we need to track the performance of that program and say, okay, we can assign like this dollar value of incremental spend per customer associated with that program. Incremental spend per customer just meaning how much more are they spending than what they normally would have spent had this program not existed. Incremental spend, marginal spend, it's all basically the same thing. And so that's kind of what a data analyst normally does, right? And how do we actually go about that process? We will get the requirements from the stakeholder. The stakeholder will have a series of questions, and then we'll go to a SQL database and we'll start plumbing the depths of that SQL database, trying to find the data, right? And there can be a couple of ways we get to that, right? Either we know where the data is and we can just go ahead and get it, or we don't know where it is. We usually have to ask someone else, hey, do you know where this data is? Or we look at documentation and try and find it. And then after that, we need to start organizing the data into a format that is readily available for that stakeholder, and then perform maybe statistical analyses on it, clean it up a little bit more, put it into a Tableau dashboard, a lot of presentation about it. So, you'll see there's 3 basic steps here. The first step, go ahead and get the requirements from the stakeholder. The second step, go ahead and find and extract the data. The third step is basically presenting. I'd say the third step is like analyzing it, and the fourth step is presenting it, right? Mm-hmm. This tool that we're building out, its kind of purpose is to solve a couple of problems we have, right? Like, so one problem we have is that where is the data? So we're creating these repositories of very clean code that is it doesn't only exist, but it can be ripped apart and put together by a machine, right? So for example, we have this snippet that'll say, okay, this is how you define demand, and this is how you pull it out, right? And another one that says, this is how you define sales, and this is how you pull it out. And another one that says, okay, this is a filter you can use to filter Nordstrom stores from Nordstrom.com. And then you write some Python code that'll take those individual snippets and kind of automatically put them together based on some natural language processing by someone typing into a Slack bot, I want to know demand at the Nordstrom store as of yesterday. So you take that in, you NLP it basically, and then you can put together these snippets programmatically in order to create a query. Now you've removed an analyst who may have taken 2 or 3 hours to figure that out, and the machine can do it in 5 to 10 minutes. The code may not be very efficient, but it's modular, right? Like modularity and efficiency, are they don't always oppose each other, but many times they do. It's not the most efficient code, but who cares? It's way faster than using an analyst time to do that. We'd rather pay for compute time than to use an analyst time, right? Because say you're paying an analyst, 6 figures, right? That's what, $100,000 a year. That's for 2,000 hours, right? Mm-hmm. So you're talking $50 an hour. If your compute costs less than costs less than $50 an hour, you're saving money. And that doesn't even take into account the marginal increase you get in what that analyst could be doing now with their time. So, that's part of it. Another part would be like automating large parts of the machine learning lifecycle, the modeling lifecycle, I should say, by having like, hyperparameter tuning and everything kind of like done for it. So it's kind of like a automated ML. Basically, we're kind of creating our own version of that. And like another one would be like an automated exploratory data analysis tool. So auto EDA, where you insert a data frame, a table basically, and it will analyze this data from 30 different angles. And then again, programmatically, and then spit out all those analyses. And then over time, we train it to get better and better at doing these things. So all of the kind of like grunt work tasks that an analyst does are now being handed off to the machine. And maybe the machine will spit out like, 100 good insight, 100 bad insights and 2 good ones, right? Like it's kind of dumb, right? So it'll like compare these things that are not supposed to be compared, for example. But that's okay, given that we've like expanded the capacity of what an analyst can do now, and we're allowing our stakeholders to like kind of do this thing on their own. And then, maybe you get to a point where you're programmatically creating Tableau dashboards. I'm not sure, but
that's really fascinating. I mean, there's so many parts to that I'd like to into. I mean, I guess the key theme to me there is that you're just making the data discovery so much more efficient, right? So instead of every single person having to know how to write SQL codes or having to know how to use an ETL tool or something similar to build up their analysis, they can get to that, analysis part, the visualizing of the data a lot quicker. That's a big part of that, right? So that's really quite interesting. So I've never, I have heard of it actually before, but how if we get down to the nitty gritty, how are you stitching together? Is there some great tools that you can use that can stitch together these queries, these data queries, that can reach back into your raw data source and then bring the curated data based on someone's natural language input?
So the natural language processing part is not the part I'm working on, so I can't comment too much on that. But the query stitching is that's an ongoing thing we're trying to figure out. So the way we've kind of thought about it is the way we've kind of thought about this whole project, right? Is that kind of think about what does a data analyst do? How do you modularize what we do down to replicable steps, right? So for example, I guess kind of the mentality you go about it with is that after we heard this task was coming up, we would go ahead and continue our regular day jobs, right? And like, do all our analyses and everything. But now we start recording, okay, what did I do? Then what did I do after that? Then what did I do after that? And then you start to find out that like while the work is very creative and very like, there's many human components to it, right? Large section of it can be modularized. The best example would be a query is basically us stitching together a bunch of different columns one by one, saying, okay, we want this column, then this column, then this column, and they get aggregated at this level, right? Like at its core, that's what we're doing. There's some complexity associated with like making it efficient, being a responsible steward of our databases. But that's kind of how we went about it, I'd say. Like, how do you modularize the task of being a data analyst? And as far as like stitching together these queries, there's no tool that we're aware of that does that for us. We write our own queries using like, business knowledge that we've accumulated over the years, and just write Python code or R code that puts that all together. That's a bit of a debate on the team. Some people like I'd say maybe like 1/3 of the team are R users and 2/3 are Python users. So there, I don't know if maybe friction might be a bit of a strong word, but there is definitely difficulty in getting all those components to work together.
Right. And so what does the end data analyst get? Do they get some sort of like user form or some like in-house app that you've built, which enables them to put all their filters in, and then that's how they get the data scrape or the data that they want?
I think we'd like to have a UI at the end of the day. Currently, it is you either interact with it through a Slack bot or through an API call. So we're putting it out as a managed service into the cloud. And then from there, you can query it using like code or something, because it's the easiest way for us to deploy it as quickly as possible.
Right. How mature do you think the technologies are to automate a lot of the analysis that you would do on data? So you mentioned it just before that it's a bit hit and miss. And to be honest, like from my experience, I have also seen that it's seriously hit and miss in terms of the insights you can get out of this automated analysis. But it's no doubt it's the future, right? Like it's going to take out, you're going to reduce so much time intensive work to get the insights that you want. But what's your view on the maturity of that over the last couple of years?
I think that it's gotten significantly better. And the funny thing is, I kind of feel like the progress that gets made is actually due more to frustration than anything. Where you have a stakeholder asking you for the, like the fifth time how to pull this thing, and you're like, I'm in SQL again. I'm just, writing out all this SQL. I don't know about y'all, but like between SQL and Python, I like just coding in Python a lot more. Like obviously they accomplish different tasks, but the tasks associated with coding in Python are just way more interesting to me than whatever I do in SQL. So, I would find any, opportunity I can to automate it. As far as like the progress that's been made in the last couple of years and like kind of where we're headed to, for anyone that doesn't know, I have my own YouTube channel every Thursday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time, United States. I run a Q&A basically where I answer any question that people might have. And one big question that people have is automation going to like render this field obsolete, which is, kind of ties into what you were saying. So the short answer is no, not anytime soon, as far as I can tell. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that business definitions are very squishy. Only the most advanced tech companies, the companies that have been tech companies from like the ground up, have all this stuff sorted out in their databases and like ready to go, ready to serve up all the time. Nordstrom's a Fortune 500 company, and we don't have that. So, we're not talking about like a small company over here. We're talking about one of the biggest companies on the planet. And you're constantly adding, and at the end of the day, analytics is always going to be a secondary concern to the business itself, right? It's not sales. It's not, I would even say IT to an extent, where these are like necessary functions for the business to actually exist. Analytics is supposed to take the business as it is, and then work with it in order to actually analyze the data. And because of that, a lot of systems aren't designed from the ground up with analytics in mind. And I think that's where automation fails, where data is not tagged correctly. Business definitions are kind of squishy. People define them different ways. Columns are named differently in different databases. Data is in different databases. That itself is a big issue, right? Like we have something like, a couple of databases at Nordstrom, and getting access to each one can be a little bit difficult. Companies end up picking what I would call subpar tools. I've worked at companies where the tools they picked were just not that great, and they were not the best you could get out there. And because of that, you were always one or two steps behind what was the leading and bleeding edge. And I specifically know this because I do consulting on the side, just to earn a little bit of extra cash. And I've been very lucky to work with one of my clients who uses Google Cloud platform, and BigQuery specifically, which I personally believe to be one of the best systems out there. Like the best is probably Snowflake for data warehousing. And then, I'd say Google Cloud is probably close after that. But using that, I'm like, there's a lot of unlock in just the ease by which I can query data using this data warehouse over here. So kind of long story short, to answer your question, I would say the fact that analytics is always going to be a secondary concern for a business because it doesn't drive the business. And that's very important for anyone that wants to get into this field to understand. Your job is important, but you're not driving the business. You're going to have data that just isn't labeled correctly, and therefore it's going to be hard to automate that. Automation works well when stuff is very, very clean in like a lab-like environment.
Mm-hmm. I would, from my perspective though, just to contrast that, I would say that the analytics function has grown in importance by many orders of magnitude in the last 5 to 7 years. And I think it's only going to get more. I mean, if you just look at the trends, if you look at the competitive advantage that you can get from better data analysis, better data decision-making, data-related decision-making, a better data culture. These are the companies that are going to win. That's why, Google and Amazon and Microsoft are winning, because they are really, they're the best at this, right? And it's the same with even less well-known companies. They are winning through data. They're winning through their outperformance in their data functions. And that's my personal view from what I've seen and read. Would you concur?
I would agree that data is getting a seat at the table as time goes on. And so, for example, like when I say a seat at the table, right? Are you represented by a chief executive? Chief data officers are becoming a thing, and they're becoming more and more common. When I say it's not like the primary function of the business, right? At the end of the day, the question, and I think this is a really important question that is just good advice for anyone that works at any company. Make sure you understand the business, right? Everything else is secondary. The business is first, right? Walmart makes more money by selling more stuff, well, maybe that's not the best example. Oracle. So they sell enterprise software, right? Their salespeople are like one-to-one related. With like the better a salesperson does, the more money Oracle makes, right? There's a one-to-one relationship over there. Supply chain people at Amazon, the more money they save, the more money the company quote unquote makes. The bigger their bottom line. Just put it that way, right? I think
it's almost like it's sort of seen as non-core. Like you can survive as a business without your analytics function, but you couldn't survive as a business without your sales function, for example.
And to speak to that's exactly right. And to speak to your point, I think that if you want to thrive reliably, then you need an analytics function. And the way I see it, why would you want to work at a company that doesn't want to thrive anyways? So I think any company worth its salt is going to invest a lot into analytics. But I do want people to understand that like salespeople are the front line of the business. Analytics is a support function for most companies. And that's really important to understand. It's important to understand if you're a support function or if you're like a frontline function, of the company.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's kind of like you could say the same for like human resources or something like HR.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, like a company does not live and die by its HR.
Yeah, that's right. But in terms of those support functions, I would still say that the analytics side across all areas within businesses is becoming more and more important up and down.
100%. Yeah. I'm only in this field because it's growing,
yeah, for sure.
So It's a great field to be in.
No doubt. One of the other things that you mentioned earlier, which I think would be interesting to talk about more is, so there are a lot of these legacy issues, right, within organizations to actually get your data function working optimally. But I think a lot, like all of us are aware of, like everyone in the data field is aware of these things, and they know that they are difficult to fix sometimes. But in your view, like how would you fix it? Like what are the priorities that a company should take, what should they prioritize to try and make a dent into these challenges?
So I think it depends on where your company is, right? So at the companies I've worked at, I would say the main problem is the availability of historical data, because you can't model without historical data, and usually a pretty substantial amount of it. And the ease of access of that data. So I would say let's say you're, taking the 30,000 foot view of it, right? Or 10,000 meter, as they say, a view of it, right? It would be, I would say that it starts off, maybe it doesn't start off, but from an implementation perspective, right? IT infrastructure is absolutely key. If let's say you run a Fortune 500 company, right? Because it changes depending on what company you're running at, right? If you're doing a Fortune 500 company, that means you probably have a lot of data to work with. You've been saving it up for years, and it's stuck in ERP systems for the most part, or CRM systems, And what's important to understand for anyone that doesn't know, ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, and it's like the pipelines of your business. It's the data pipeline, the core data pipeline of your business. What are you selling? Who are you selling it to? What are you buying? Who are you buying it from? So suppliers, like all like the really core, like base level stuff to function, like to keep track of the data in your business, usually gets stored in your ERP systems. And then CRM is, I think, is what customer resource management. So that's like, okay, like who are we selling to? How do we keep track of them? Stuff like that. So your most base business data is usually in your ERP system. And the thing is, a lot of these databases were not built to analyze data. They're really slow, they're really old, and they were built as transactional databases. Something goes in there, and then like at some point in time, you can pull it up for a quarterly report, sure, fine, like just really basic reporting functionality inside it. I think the first thing that a company needs to do is figure out its data warehousing solution. I will just go ahead, on the record and say the favorite one I've used so far is Snowflake. I really, really enjoy using it because you can dump data from many different sources into it very easily and organize it pretty simply as well. So I would say you get a data warehouse first, and then second, you get business leaders from across your organization to start talking about, okay, when all these directors come together and they talk to a VP or they go talk to an SVP or a C-level executive, depending on how many levels are in your business, right? What are we reporting on? What do we want to know more about? get together all those metrics, right? And then you'd be surprised how many director level meetings people go in and they have no idea what the data is. They're like, oh yeah, I think sales are trending up. I think sales are over here. I think, this is happening. The way I see it, right? A director should know exactly what their metrics are on every single morning, every single day of the week. They should know exactly what their metrics are. Otherwise, what are they? Your analytics function needs a lot of upgrading, in my opinion. And you can only do that when you have the data available in the data warehouse, and then you have the confluence of priorities between the business and the and IT to say, okay, we want these metrics. This stuff needs to go to the data warehouse. How much storage do we purchase? How much compute do we purchase in order to get all this done? And then after that, you get your data engineers together, start putting the data in, get data analysts to start cranking out basic reporting, right? Start off over there. What's the basic reporting that you need to get done? Connect Tableau to it, Power BI, whatever your BI solution is. I think with the BI solution, you can basically pick anything. It's all the same, basically. And you connect all that together, and you have your basic BI reporting. And then from there, you start getting into, okay, like forward looking, how can we do better? What can we do better? What are the advanced modeling exercises we can do and everything? So long story short, you get your data warehouse, right? Get all your data in one place and then start cleaning it bit by bit, making these clean data marts that people can pull data from, make these clean reports that directors can take to their meetings. That way you get upper level management buy-in as to, oh, okay, like Sam, the VP, his team is doing really well. Every time I ask Sam a question, he busts out a report and he knows exactly what's going on. Depending on your executives, you may have to sell it a different way. One of the companies I worked at, we sold the reporting to them by making a Tableau dashboard that could be printed out in PDF format very, very quickly. So you get like a kind of a tear sheet, basically. Another company I worked at, the sales department, I created a Tableau dashboard, but it had to be in a A4 format lengthwise. That way salespeople could use it like a tear sheet because they were used to tear sheets, right? Even though dashboards are typically, horizontally oriented. But if you work in like a warehousing company, right, you go to a warehouse, they don't have widescreen monitors for the most part. They have these like square monitors kind of, so those small things are things you can do to increase adoption. You need to make your analytical products a joy to use. The best products I've ever created were the ones that directors were excited to use, and when a director's excited, then it's smooth sailing over there because they'll just keep giving you ideas and giving you resources to, execute on those ideas. So.
No, those are all up and down the stack. Really, really great points. A lot of gold nuggets in what you just went through. One of the things that comes up in my mind whenever we talk about the whole sort of cycle of data and how to get the most out of your data, I always relate it to the sort of mining or the oil and gas industry, mm-hmm. where you've got this raw material, which let's just say that's your data, right? And you need to, it's just everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. You need to go and dig for it. You need to go and find it. But then you need to extract it and you need to get it into sort of a refinery. And you mm-hmm. need to get the right materials or extract the right things out of it. And that's sort of like your data warehouse, right? Yeah. And then I think there's this really key concept of pipelines, data pipelines. And these data pipelines are what feeds from the data warehouse out to all of your key stakeholders, out to your business functions, out to your key data teams. And what you do with those data pipelines and how aware you make people of what is happening with those pipes, so that the data that it can flow through that pipe. How do you access that data through that pipe? How to create an offshoot of that pipe to get something else. How you construct that within a business, how you organize within a business is such a huge part of the success of just embedding data more into your organization and into your decision making, the culture of decision making. And so that to me is a bit of a missing gap I see in a lot of businesses, old and new. Is the data warehouse solutions are a dime a dozen. There's plenty of them, but then getting that information very efficiently out to the selected stakeholders within the business, so say your sales team, your marketing team, your executives, etc., that can be improved a lot. Mm-hmm. And then once you get it into the end user, it's sort of okay, what do you do from a value added perspective? Kind of like what you do with raw materials in the real world, right? It's like, do you make plastic out of it? Do you use it in just general fuel, or do you upgrade it to jet fuel? I don't know. There's like lots of derivatives that you can create, and that's really where the analytics part, the data analytics tool comes into play, whether it's Tableau, Power BI, or one of the various other tools that are used out there. So that's kind of like how I relate it in my mind, and it is so aligned. Like if you think about it like that, because I think a lot of businesses don't have a concept of what to even do with dashboards.
Right.
It can be such a daunting task. Like, do I just create a dashboard and that's the first and only thing I have to do? No, I think you need to think a bit more holistically, like a mining operation. And if you can get that mining operation working really efficiently up and down the stack, that's how you're going to win. That's how you're going to get a huge competitive advantage.
Well, I mean, I think I love the oil and gas, or specifically the oil metaphor. I think it's like easily one of the best metaphors out there, right? Like, because there's so many ways you can tie it back to the real world, right? So, great example. Why do the Saudis make the most money off of oil? It's not, I mean, they do have a ton of oil, yes, but specifically the thing about Saudi Arabia is it's all like in a big hole in the ground. Like it's all in like a single hole for the most part, right? Like you can just like, dig something in the middle of, I think it's the western side of the country. I think it's the western side of the country, right? And then they ship it over to the east. But like you just, dig it in, you just like, stab a hole in the ground in the western side of the country and oil starts coming out because there's like just a big like reservoir of it underground. Whereas, for example, Russia, on the other hand, they have a ton of oil as well. It's just covered over, it's just over like, thousands and thousands of square miles of Siberian nothingness. And so like, how does this metaphor tie to data, right? One is you have 10 different databases, the Russia situation, we have 10 different databases where everything's all over the place. We don't even know what exists out there. What you really want, you want the Saudi situation. You put everything into one data warehouse that people can easily access, right? This means getting it out of the ERP systems. Obviously, they're still your transactional systems. You keep them up, but you get them out of the ERP systems, put them into a warehousing solution where it can be quickly and easily accessed. One thing I think people don't pay enough attention to, what's the query time for pulling data out? Obviously, you want people to like write efficient queries and everything, sure, whatever. But like if a query takes 2 minutes longer to run on one system versus another system, I think that like something that a lot of IT teams don't consider is assuming that we pay a senior data analyst $100,000 a year and they run like, 10 queries a day. And we extrapolate that for the 100 analysts that we hire, each at, $100,000 per year. How much money are we losing with analysts just waiting around for queries to run, right? And this might be me, the ground level employee, kind of saying like, complaining out to the ether. But I don't know. I feel like it's an important consideration as well. Like query times are important. So the oil and gas thing is super, super relevant. Another offshoot of that, Standard Oil, the biggest oil corporation to ever exist at its time, right? The John Rockefeller Corporation. They didn't make money mining oil. That wasn't how they made the money, right? Because mining is a very risky operation. Yeah. Where Rockefeller found the best way to make the money was to just own all the refining capacity of, the United States. Right.
I read his book. It was a very cutthroat mentality, but a ruthless. It was very ruthless, but it was the way to do it, right? Yeah, it was the refining. Refiners where they totally had a monopoly, and I think also they there was distribution in there as well. They started buying up the railways as well, or some of the trains. I think from
yeah. The Rockefeller, the Standard Oil is a crazy company to read about, but I mean, refining is like analysis and data science. That's where you want to be at in the field as well, like that, and then data engineering. Those are the three like jobs in the field that make the most money, specifically data science and data engineering.
Yeah. To me, it's like one of the things that I always fall back on, and that is there's just a clear deficiency. Is this pipeline concept? Is there? I think most organizations now have the capability to create a data warehouse. There's more than enough solutions out there. There's a lot of help out there, but it's still sometimes getting stuck. It's still not piping its way out to the right people in an efficient way. And I think that is a clear segment of your data strategy that you need to be more focused on, is how do you just get the data out? And one of the things, this sort of just circles back to what you mentioned earlier, is that you don't want your analysts spending tons of time trying to figure out SQL codes or having to ask someone for a SQL code to actually get the data. You've got to get the pipe more streamlined to just get that data into the hands of people as quickly as possible. I think natural language is a step in the right direction here, but it's probably not totally there just yet. So you need to find some sort of solution before that really matures, to get data more efficiently out to your org. Like, I would imagine there is just millions of data points that you guys collect every single day, right? I mean, huge transactional company. A general analyst isn't going to be able to rock up to the sales department or the marketing department and just know straight off the bat like how to get the data, right? So you need to get in front of that. You need to get in front of that challenge, in my view, and find increasingly simple ways or democratized ways that you can actually get that out to people and get them access to it, whether it's pre-formatted SQL queries or being able to just click, having like you mentioned earlier, like a catalog of SQL queries or a catalog of ways to get the data out that you want.
We taught directors how to use Tableau at my first company. That was extremely helpful. So the engineers would put the data in front of us, the analysts. We would clean all that up and then create these clean data tables. And then we would teach. We would show the directors, like, we create all these reports, right? And then eventually, like I said earlier, right, the directors were like, oh my God, I can know exactly what's going on a day-by-day basis. This is crazy, right? So we're getting buy-in from them now. And then they come back and they're like, okay, Shashank, do these 10 different things. And then obviously I can't do all those 10 things at once. So then the director's like, okay, how do I use this tool? And then we just teach them how to use the tool. And the funny thing is that actually offloads a lot of tasks from us, because now the director is doing their own data analysis, at least for the, relatively more straightforward stuff. And we make sure to give them a little bit. We gave them a Tableau workbook literally called Director Sandbox, where it was a Tableau workbook connected to a specific table that we created for them, where they could just like drag and drop stuff and create their own little pivot tables and present it themselves. So you're 100% right, Sam. You unlock insane capabilities when you start democratizing the access to clean data for people. And it's all about the pipelines, like you said,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, that's a perfect example. Like, if you can get a bunch of directors to and look, I'm convinced. I mean, we're heavy in Power BI at Enterprise DNA, right? So I'm just relating a lot of this back to Power BI. But if you can get a senior director, able to create their own mini report by dragging and dropping visualizations, because you've done a lot of the back end works to make sure the data is in a intuitive format for them to be able to do that. I mean, you can get anyone to do it, like anyone.
Yeah.
If you can get a director, you can get anyone.
People are excited to do it. And it's great, right? Because the ad hoc stuff's the stuff that's kind of more boring, in my opinion, right? So you upload that to the director, they do it themselves anyways. Everyone wins.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. So true. What's we're kind of obsessed at Enterprise DNA about the automation of analytics, because even though there's been just an exponential increase in the toolings and features out there that you can use around data now. I mean, it's been quite transformational over the last decade, from what we were, in early 2010s. Most people are still just using Excel 10 years ago. So, things have been very, very transformational. But I still think there's such a long way to go. Like, that's my personal view. That's a view we hold within Enterprise DNA. There's still a lot of inefficiencies around like how you create dashboards. Sometimes, there's some technical challenges around, or there's a lot of skill level deficiency around creating data models and creating visualizations which are compelling, that people are actually engaged in. There's a lot of these little things that we think need to be more automated, so that many more users can utilize them and create a strong output that is going to make a difference. So my question to you on that is, what are some of the things that you're seeing now that could help that, and sort of what are some of the opportunities out there to do this from what you've seen and are seeing now?
So one thing that I've noticed is that, or one thing that we did in at Nordstrom, right? Our whole thing was that we actually created what would you call it? Standards and best practices committee. And automation, I don't know where I read this before, but basically at its core, if you want to automate something, right? Let's ignore the fancy ML techniques and like natural and computers like learning on their own, right? Because that stuff can be very difficult to execute. If you want to automate something, then automation only comes after standardization. And so standardization is kind of where we decided to start off. And so you brought up a great example, right? Ineffective visuals. So within that committee, right, we have a couple of people, myself included, who are responsible for standardizing a Tableau format, a Tableau workbook. I mean, Nordstrom's a Tableau company, right? A Tableau workbook that anyone can use to get started with their analyses at the company, right? So they know where to put the filters, they know how many filters to use. They're like basic formatting things that way. And the reason this is important, right? This stuff seems frivolous, right? But it's not. The reason it's important that you have the same colors, everything looks standard. Is because directors will go from workbook or notebook to notebook, workbook to workbook, as will other people. And it's of the utmost importance that there is this little mental switching or like as little mental capacity used switching your schema to adjust this workbook created by someone completely different, right? So that's how we standardize that. We standardize colors, palettes, everything. And also it makes it easier for people to get the final steps of, getting the workbook production ready by, just standardizing that part for them. Queries is another big one. We have standard CI/CD, so continuous integration, continuous integration, continuous development at our company that you're supposed to use if you want to use a Nordstrom platforms, basically. And this means that code across our company is all standardized. SQL queries, we're working on standardizing that now because that is a little bit more complicated to standardize in Python, actually, in my opinion, because you're talking about standardizing like business logic, right? And so I think you're 100% right. Automation is kind of automation for the sake of making our lives more interesting. Again, like I said, ad hoc queries are kind of boring in my opinion. I want to actually analyze the data. But if you could automate that stuff, right, that'd be awesome. But that requires you to start off with standardization, which is where I think that's a concrete thing people can do. Make a standards and best practices committee at your company.
Yeah, look, I love that. Here's how I'm going to reword that because I relate it to another great saying I heard before. So maybe we could say automation lies downstream from standardization. And I think that is so true, right? So true. Like if you can build the standards, then the automation will just naturally be able to flow off that because everyone is using the same visualization template. Everyone is creating their code in a similar way. And that is, from what I've seen through a lot of our client engagements, that is an oversight. It's a massive oversight when a lot of analytics implementations occur, no matter what technologies you use, is too bought into the self-service side of analytics. You've got to have standards to make that self-service work and to optimize it, to make it really, really effective and optimized.
Exactly. So yeah, no, I think that's definitely the right method to go about it. There's a really funny meme I saw the other day where basically it was a bunch of cavemen dragging a sled with square wheels on it, right? And this guy comes up with a circular wheel and he's like, guys, I have an improvement. And the cavemen are like, not right now, Tom, we're too busy. And that's kind of that's the thing you have to fight against whenever you're talking about stuff like this, right? Because you have 10,000 things to do. This is not directly value added to the business immediately in the sense that taking the time, standardizing stuff, making the standard template and everything. You can go to your director and say, I did this, and not all directors will be like, oh yes, this is going to help improve the business right now, right? But you got to make that time, otherwise you'll be dragging around a cart with square wheels when you could be using circular wheels. It'll take time to take it off and install the new wheel, but that time is time very, very well spent.
Yeah, I like it. One of the biggest time improvements I think you can make, it's actually twofold, and it's something that you mentioned earlier, is and this is on the visualization side specifically. And this is just from recent experience, but also from developing a lot of just actual reports myself. On the one, and it comes down to having a really strong visualization template that includes the theming that you mentioned, the colors, what visualizations to show with what sort of data, how to fill out a report within a grid pattern, how to have good labeling, just all of these like standards you can have. It saves so much time on the development side, because the creative part of building reports can take a long time, and everyone is not creatively inclined. I didn't know this, I didn't know this until recently, but not everyone can create a compelling looking report. And and I'd even say it's a very small portion who actually can. We run what we call enterprise DNA challenges, and every we have a lot of great developers who submit challenge entries, and I think we've got some of the best designed reports you could ever imagine in Power BI, within our catalog of challenges. But it's amazing to see how many newbies who join our challenges really struggle on the visualization side. Great analytics, great insights, but it doesn't really come through in how they've displayed it. They usually get better, but I think cutting down that time to get better and standardizing things across the board, I would say it could be a huge factor in the success of your just like general deployment of your reporting strategies. Like you're just being able to save a lot of time, get them done quicker, iterate faster, because you don't have to worry too much about the visualization side. And then on the flip side, it also relates back to what you mentioned. It saves a lot of time for the consumer, because they're not having to rewire their brains to figure out, okay, what is this? How is this person showing me this particular analysis? How do they want me to navigate through this report? So if you standardize all of that stuff, I mean, the time savings on both sides of the coin there are significant.
Yeah, no, 100%, exactly.
So that's a big one, and that's one of the things that we're kind of obsessed about on the automation side is can we automate in some ways how to create these great templates, or is there just this? And this is quite Power BI related, because that's our focus, obviously. But how can we, as an organization, provide this offering or this service out so that others can jump over that hurdle quicker? They don't have to go and do a lot of self-discovery and waste a lot of time to realize, okay, here's a great template, let's just use this across everyone. So that's sort of one of the big things that we're thinking a lot about, and I would dare say would make a pretty big difference if we could solve it in some respects.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, make it easier, remove all of the menial tasks from people's jobs. That way they can stick to the intellectually stimulating ones. I think it can be a difficult slog to get that done, but it is something that it pays many dividends on your analytics org, in my opinion.
Yeah. So what are some of the other interesting things that you're? It's great to you've obviously got a presence online as well, which is really cool. What are some of the other interesting things that you're coming across with your within your network and your profile out there?
Yeah, so for anyone not aware, I have a YouTube channel on the side where basically the goal of it is to get people jobs in the world of analytics and get people good jobs in the world of analytics. So, a very core example of that is I'm surprised at the number of people who are offered $40,000 US in New York City to do data analyst work. And I tell them I'll just be blunt. That's just not a good salary for this type of work. You should be paid a lot more, especially if you're being asked to do like SQL work and Python work and everything. So after I've been super lucky that I've never been a victim of such a like no one's offered me that little. And so I want to make sure that I talk to as many people as possible and spread the word to as many people as possible that there are standards. There are standards you have to maintain for yourself. And there are standards in this industry. There are standards that should exist in this industry, I should say, for how much you pay for a person. If a person can't afford to pay him, you can't have a data analyst. Go figure it out, And I think that's really important. So it's really important empowerment that I like to give people of like, you can ask for more or take the job, put in the minimal effort in, and then go find a better job. Because if someone's paying $40,000 a year, they can only expect so much effort out of you, in my opinion. Again, in New York City, right? It depends on the region of the country you're in. Maybe there is a region of the country where $40,000 makes sense, but definitely not New York City.
Yeah. So why don't you plug your YouTube channel? How can people find you?
Yeah, so I guess we'll link it in the show notes, but it's Shashank Kalanithi. So SHASHAN as in Nancy KALAN as in Nancy ITHI. And so yeah, we'll leave it in the show notes. But it is no, that's really what I do. I want people to get like good jobs in the industry, and I want them to have the technical skills to be able to get those. Or if they don't want that, the great thing about, if you know how to code and, create dashboards and stuff is you can go and get a 6-figure consulting job, like freelancing. Freelancing is a better word for it. And, that kind of flexibility of options is only available to so many people on the planet, right? Where you can, do whatever you want, wherever you want, because of how open this field is to remote work.
Yeah, totally. I look at that, if someone's throwing those sort of numbers out as well. I mean, there's a clear supply. There's a clear lack of supply of skills and talent in this area. So I'm surprised that anyone can even get away with that.
Yeah.
Because, on job boards and things like that, you've got so much competition for within. I'm sure like Microsoft and Amazon and Google and Facebook. I mean, they've got so many jobs going that they're soaking up a lot of the demand, right? So in theory, everyone left over should be still getting high salaries.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, and I honestly, it surprises me. I have a feeling, and this is something that's really important to understand, right? Like, here's a great way to do it. So, when I left college, right, I kind of assumed, for example, like, as a kid, that all IT jobs paid well. That's not at all true, at all. Not even in the slightest. There are many IT jobs that will pay close to minimum wage. And that's just the industry standard. So it's not even like they should be paying this much and they pay this much. Like, really, I don't know what people's opinions are on minimum wage, but the industry standard currently for many jobs is to pay, basically nothing, like IT service desks, stuff like that, not like back end support and stuff like that. But I think in that way, in the analytics field, you do have people who can work on the really, really, really low end of like very basic Excel reports and stuff like that. Maybe in that situation, it makes sense to pay someone that much. I'm not going to really give an opinion there. The point I want to make to people is that in this field, there's so much opportunity up here. Here's something to chew on, right? At least in the United States, right? Because I can only talk about the United States because I've only worked here, right? Everywhere I go, the number of H-1B people. So for anyone not familiar, H-1B is the visa that people get in order to enter the country as a skilled worker. It's not an easy visa to get, and there's way more applications than there are spots available. Long story short, it exists because of a dearth of supply in the United States. Our education system does not produce enough qualified candidates for these jobs. And if you want some logic behind that, on average, it costs about $20,000 extra for a company to hire an H-1B person because of all the hoops you have to jump through with the government and everything, and then you have to get visas approved. That's not even like a surefire thing. It's not like Canada, for example, where it can happen like that. So the fact that just anecdotally, you go anywhere, right, you'll start to see a lot of H-1B people working in this industry. That says that there's a lot of demand and very little supply. Because it's expensive to hire people from other countries. It's expensive. It takes a lot of processing. And so I think if you want to get into this industry, yeah, you're especially at the mid to high end, there's so much opportunity. There's so much money to be made. I think if you want to get into be a data analyst, right? And anyone can feel on the YouTube, in the YouTube comment section, feel free to correct me if you think I'm wrong. I think you can get about up to $200,000 TC, total comp, total cash comp, from one of the big tech companies as a data analyst. So that's not your 401k or anything. I'm talking about the base salary, stock options per year, or RSUs per year, and your bonus. Now, if you get into a data science position, I mean, I don't really see why you couldn't make $700,000-800,000 as a senior, a principal. Sorry, as a principal in these fields. So, I mean, as you can see, the salaries all over the place in this industry. There's a lot of opportunity here. So
yeah, definitely. And to me, a lot of that is a supply and demand
mm-hmm.
balance. basically. Like there's just such a need for these skills, and that's one of the trends that I would say that since enterprise DNA's infancy, we've been trying to target, right? There's just like this massive skills gap, and we're trying to upskill everyone with our platform as quickly and effectively as we can. One of the things I have to go back to, which put a smile on my face, is when you said, I realized that you realized very quickly that not everyone in IT created a lot of value, or I think it was kind of that line, and I had to laugh because I actually never worked in IT. I was never actually an IT person when I worked in organizations. I've got a finance background mainly, and I worked sort of more front office, like markets type roles. But I was always very analytically based. I brought a lot of analytical flavor to what I did. But anyway, when I first started Enterprise DNA, my experience with not everyone, but a lot of IT areas is they didn't all bring value. They brought a lot of bureaucracy. That was honestly what I felt when I, not being too experienced in actually how the IT teams actually work. So I had to laugh. I had to laugh when you said that.
I was surprised. I just assumed anyone that worked with computers gets paid a lot of money, and that's just not true. As a small tangent over there, when people talk about the gutting of American manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of what they're talking about as well. Like they, like a lot of good paying jobs for, whoever you decide to blame left the country. And they got replaced, because obviously people still have to work, right? What did they get replaced with? A lot of them got replaced with service jobs that are not as good as you think they are. So just because someone is in an office doesn't mean it's a good job, because that person might be paid $10 an hour. Whereas in a factory, they would have been paid $25 to $50 an hour. Sure, it's, physically more demanding, but they're literally being paid 2.5 to 5 times as much to work in a factory, And so that's something I like to communicate that, because I definitely came into the workplace very ignorant of the idea that not all office jobs are good jobs, or high paying jobs, let's call it that, high paying jobs, right? And if you find yourself in a position like that, find a way to upskill, find a way to learn how to do SQL, how to do Python, Tableau, plugging my own YouTube channel. I have all those courses on my YouTube channel as well. If you know all those skills and you can they give you the tool set to, and I love the way you expressed it, Sam, to add value. You get paid a fraction of the value that you generate for a company. That's just how capitalism works. Someone hires you to generate value for them, and they'll pay you a fraction of that value. So the easiest way to increase your salary is to generate 10x the value you want to make. If you want to make $100,000, generate $1 million of value. I think 5 is the conservative calculation people use, but I was talking to this Deloitte consultant. He's like, nah, man, it's got to be 10x, man. So, he was very much a Deloitte consultant.
That wasn't just consulting speak, was it?
Yeah, it could have been. He was like very much like a Deloitte type of guy.
They're professionals.
Yeah. Him and there were some BCG guys I talked to that were like the same way. They're like, nah, man, 10, 20x, we'll figure it out. I'm like, I mean, yeah, you do you,
And then we'll be inside your business for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. Oh man.
Trying to do what we said we could do in 6 months.
If anyone wants to see a funny video, look up Steve Jobs.
Hopefully we're drawing a few laughs out there from the listeners.
Look up Steve Jobs consultant on YouTube if you want to laugh. The man always had an opinion on everything. So
yeah, right. Look, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it actually goes back to something you said right at the start. That you got from Scott Galloway, is where you bring 2 unrelated things together, and that's where you can really create some value out there, right? And so I look at it like I would dare say that the easiest path to increase your salary or increase your worth right at this point in time, with all of the trends that are happening in every single business right now, is to bring an analytics bend to what you're doing, to bring an analytics focus, bring more data, data related decision making into your routine, into your business area, into your business function. To me, that was actually really, I would have to say, what I did a lot myself. Within the businesses before I started Enterprise DNA a number of years ago. I always thought, wow, there's so much more we can be doing here. And I would dare say it is exactly the same right now in the majority of businesses out there.
100%. I think it's not said enough, but you're 100% right. No matter what you do, there's some ability to add analytics to it to improve the efficiency and efficacy of what you're doing. And yeah, the value over there is amazing. It's one of the reasons I love this field, right? Like I've worked supply chains, I've worked digital transformation, I'm working retail right now. You can take these skills and apply it to basically anything. You can go into any industry you want to, provided you're willing to learn about the domain, because the skills are so transferable. And to an extent, data is data. As long as you understand the business, data is data. So yeah, no, it's a beautiful field to be in right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. You wouldn't believe how many times, like it's like with Power BI, right? Data, it doesn't matter like where the data is coming from. It's actually all relatively the same. Like the way that you analyze it is the same. It's amazing how not everyone sort of really believes that though. Like when we're creating training content or education content, everyone feels like they want everything to be ultra specific to their industry or their business because they think it's different. But the reality is, yes, okay, there are some differences, there are some slight differences, but the whole sort of techniques that you use to actually get high quality data output, high quality reports are actually very similar no matter what data you work with. And so I try and reiterate that as much as possible. And I think, here's another good opportunity to really do that. Like it's so transferable. The skill, it's really just getting the skill set, getting the creativity, the analytical creativity going. And you can do analysis on any data. You can create fantastic value-driven reports on anything.
And I would actually argue that's a better mentality to go forward with it with, right? There's a great book I read a while ago called Range: Why Generals Succeed in a Increasingly, what is it called, like specialized world. Long story short, right? There are two types of ways you can make it become successful, right? Just broadly speaking, you can either be LeBron James, right? LeBron James was just an insane athlete. Like no matter how hard I worked, if I was at the gym every day, 24 hours a day, I don't have the genetics to be as good as LeBron James. It does not matter how hard I try. There are some people who can focus all their efforts on one thing, and they can be so good at that one thing. They can be so top tier at that one thing. And in athletics, it's even harder, right? Because it's not even like I'm the best Fortune 500 CEO, where it's like there are 10 different things you have to be good at to like be good at it. It's like this is a very exacting thing, basketball, right? With exacting rules, right? That's one way to do it, right? But that's not the way that'll work for 99.9% of us. So most of us just don't have the genetics to be that. I mean, at that point, it's just genetics, really. Like, I mean, obviously hard work and everything, but I mean, you've seen LeBron's body. The man's a monster. The better way is kind of like what you said, right? You want to learn these generalized skills and apply them in creative ways. That's why you want to learn the generalized skills. You want to obviously learn the analytical techniques of your industry, but then you'll just be doing what everyone else is doing anyways. You're not going to be special in any way. By learning these many different techniques, you can start saying like, oh, we use this thing in healthcare. Maybe that'll make sense over here. Tremendous example. If you want to know how to make explainable models, go and see what financial institutions are doing. In the United States, if you want to give out a loan, right, the loan process for giving it out is very automated. Your machine learning model has to be extremely explainable. And I think it's the FINRA. FINRA will break down your office doors and be like, okay, explain exactly how this thing works. Why did this person get a loan? Why did this person not get a loan? Because the U.S. government is very, very concerned with making sure that loans are distributed well, regardless of maybe not class, but like race, gender, stuff like that, right? And like we're trying to make explainable models at Nordstrom. Obviously, there's not nearly such a high bar for us to get that done. But looking at what JP Morgan Chase does, we got some ideas. We're like, oh, okay, these guys are like financial people are like the masters of explainable models because they have to be, like legally speaking. There's so much regulatory stuff. Exactly.
Yeah. I actually read that Range book as well a couple of years back, and to be honest, I did come out of it a little bit confused, but because it's hard to totally agree with everything that he said. But one of the biggest things that you got out of it, the premise of the book really was that he was trying to, or the researchers were trying to have an opposed opinion on the 10,000 hours rule.
Yes. Yes.
There's this folklore of like everyone should do something for 10,000 hours and you'll be amazing, like Roger Federer or like Tiger Woods or LeBron, right? And their theory was you're better to actually, they gave a lot of examples and supporting documentation that it's actually better to be a generalist earlier on and then bring a different approach to something later on in life. And then you've got a higher chance of success than just putting all your eggs into one basket and doing it for 10,000 hours. So that was kind of like the crux of what I got out of that book. But, I think it's trying to put something, a too simple a theory on a very, complex, because there is, if you're genetically, genetically you are more aligned to do something well, or like maybe the 10,000 hours will work for you rather than, if you're a jock and you're trying to be a rocket scientist or something, like, is probably going to be a little bit more difficult. Like, it's hard to, I think there's a lot more variation than maybe that book particularly said. But anyway, that's
for sure. I'm sure that there is definitely someone out there who's even potentially better than LeBron, like just, genetically speaking. We just don't know who they are, because a lot, the book kind of glosses over this. A lot of it is just like, what did you try when you were really young? But that's totally fair. I feel like, you got to say something to sell the book, right? So that's how they, make it really simple so you can sell it. And then I found, I'm a big reader, but I will definitely say a lot of books sound like they say in 10,000 words, something that could be said in 100, Yeah,
that's why services like Blinkist are so popular.
I need to try it out, but yes, it sounds like a really, really good idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so popular because I've got Blinkist, because you just get the summarized version, you get the key points out of it. But I think I don't disagree. I think that the 10,000 hours, I remember my dad telling me about that, like when I was growing up, and it was sort of like gospel, in terms of, you want to be good at something, you got to do like 10,000 hours. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having an opposing view to that, because there's lots of ways that you can get to somewhere and be like really successful. There's lots of examples where people haven't done one thing in their life and done lots of different things, and then all of a sudden approached a problem or approached a field in a totally different way and absolutely dominated it. So I think there's many quality reasons why you can have opposing paths to success.
And I mean, I would even argue that probably most incredibly traditionally successful people who are not athletes, right? Because again, athletics is something that can be optimized for, like for a specific sport or something, right? Like your Gates, your Jobs, stuff like that. A lot of them are generalists. Jobs did not create Jobs did not become the software mogul of the 80s through the 90s because he was the best computer programmer in existence. Like he probably wrote very little code in relation to Windows, actually. Jobs was not the preeminent artist of our generation. It was a bunch of different things that came together, that created a confluence of factors that were applied in a very creative and intelligent way to create a, tremendous business opportunity. Or even like, just being very, very talented. Celebrities are a great example. Just being very, very talented at singing does not make you Adele. You need to have stage presence. You need to have like a story, a personality, right? So I think that's kind of why I like the book. Especially like I love my parents. There was that attitude of like be like hyper specialized at this thing was one that very much like pervaded my household. And then reading this, I was kind of like, okay, you know what, like, try out a couple of different things, kind of see where you stick in, like, the Scott Galloway method, find two things that you stick well at, and then, get good at those two things,
Yeah. And look, if we relate this back to a business entity, right? Like you can look at the analytics function as that creative outlet where you can try and find your advantage through the answers that you find in your analysis and within that data, within your raw material sitting within your business. And I think if you can bring that innovation, that creativity to how you approach this part of your business, you can find those insights that are going to make a big difference in a multitude of ways in various different areas of your business. So that's a nice way to, I think, relate it back to our core discussion here around data and around analytics.
Yeah.
Well, I think I think we've probably gone over time. I don't even know when we started, but I just enjoyed it. I just enjoyed chatting.
I had a great time.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Why do we round off? Thanks so much for chatting away today. I can tell you're a real sort of expert in the field and doing some great stuff out there within your network. Do you want to maybe just plug like a bit more about some of the things that you do on the side if people want to reach out to you?
Yeah. So if you want to reach out to me, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube comment section is probably the easiest way to get to me. My channel is all about teaching you what you need to know to break into the world of analytics. I have a free course on Python, on SQL, Tableau, machine learning, and probably something else that I forgot. So feel free to check it out over there. They're all great ways to get primed on the subject before you decide to break into the world. I do a live stream every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific. That's 11 a.m. Eastern United States time. And that's a great place to reach me again and ask very specific questions about the industry if you are so inclined. But thank you so much for having me on, Sam.
Pleasure. No, awesome to have you on, and really enjoyed our discussion. I'm sure there'll be a lot of value that the listeners got out of this one. So yeah, really appreciate the time.
Thank you.